Winter of '83. Created by director Nathaniel Curtis, Winter of '83 is a lesser-known analog horror series that first surfaced on YouTube in 2021. It sets the tone for everything analog horror aims to achieve. The story centers around a small unnamed American town in the winter of 1983. Through distorted VHS tapes, fake news segments, and emergency alerts, we learn that something anomalous is happening with the local weather patterns. As the temperature drops and strange sky phenomena emerge, the townspeople begin to disappear. The series never fully explains the event, but that's the point, leaving viewers to fill in the blanks with dread. And what makes Winter of '83 stand out is its use of degraded visual quality to enhance fear. Though not as long or widely known as Local 58 or Gemini Home Entertainment, it's praised by fans of the genre for its subtle escalation and atmospheric world-building. It was one of the early analog horror works that leaned heavily into environmental fear rather than direct antagonists, making it a key influence on later series. Greylock. First appearing in 2022, this analog horror series made an impression despite its mysterious origins. While its exact creator remains somewhat obscure, the content itself is anything but forgettable. The Greylock series revolves around a fictional town named Greylock, nestled in the Pacific Northwest, where reality appears to warp through corrupted television signals, emergency broadcasts, and fragmented surveillance tapes. At first glance, the town seems ordinary, until you're shown public service announcements warning residents not to trust their reflections and school safety videos that dissolve into cryptic instructions about alternate individuals. The deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that something inhuman has found its way into Greylock, and it's been there a long time. What gives Greylock its distinct flavor is its approach to fear. It doesn't rely on sudden shocks. Instead, it plays with repetition, corrupted language, and institutional messaging to build paranoia. A recurring element in the series is the Switch, an unexplained event that suggests certain residents of Greylock have been replaced. By what or why, the tapes never say. Fans compare its tone to Welcome to Night Vale if it were filtered through broken cassette tapes and broadcast towers. And despite its relatively short run, Greylock has quickly gained a following for its careful pacing, deadpan delivery, and grounded use of real-world government aesthetics to sell its unease. Gemini Home Entertainment. Created by Remy Abode and uploaded to YouTube starting in late 2019, this analog horror series is one of the most well-known and influential in the genre. It presents itself as a collection of educational VHS tapes from the 80s and early 90s, covering topics like wildlife, astronomy, geology, and home safety. But the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that something is horribly wrong with the natural order of things. The brilliance of Gemini Home Entertainment lies in its slow unraveling. The tapes begin innocent. A documentary about deep-sea creatures, a video on tree identification, a slideshow about home defense, but each one carries a sinister twist. Forests are infested with parasitic life forms. Alien beings called the Iris are manipulating biological evolution. Human civilizations may have already been infiltrated. Every tape adds another piece to a larger puzzle of planetary-scale invasion and ancient unknowable forces. One recurring idea is the concept of the woodcrawlers, disturbing spider-like entities linked to deep forests, and the Iris, celestial bodies or beings that warp time, biology, and perception. There's also an implied apocalypse already underway as humans are gradually being replaced, reprogrammed, or harvested. The series doesn't rely on characters or direct plot. Instead, it builds its mythology through fake corporate branding, corrupt emergency broadcasts, and media glitches. Everything is presented as if the viewer is watching training materials created by organizations trying to understand or contain something far beyond their reach. Rather than going for shock or jump scares, Gemini uses altered logic to create a sense of dread. The Trinity Desk Project. This lesser-known analog horror series slowly gained attention for its clinical tone and deeply disturbing concept. The setup is deceptively simple. It documents a research initiative by a fictional government or scientific body attempting to study a seemingly ordinary office desk. But this desk, referred to as the Trinity Desk, turns out to be anything but ordinary. Presented as a collection of lab notes, voice recordings, and surveillance footage, the series methodically details strange phenomena occurring around the object. Items placed on the desk vanish or reappear altered. Time behaves inconsistently near it, and most unsettling of all, individuals exposed to the desk for extended periods begin to act erratically, report vivid hallucinations, or disappear entirely. One of the most disturbing motifs involves silence. Long periods of nothing, followed by distorted human screams or sudden cuts to blackout. The implication is that the desk made contact with something not just alien, but incompatible with human thought. Something that sees the experimenters as a curiosity, or perhaps prey. The Trinity Desk Project doesn't go viral like the Mandela Catalog or the Backrooms, but it's arguably more unsettling in its restraint. It feels like something you shouldn't be watching, like some sort of footage that escaped destruction by accident. Angel Hair. Masquerading as a harmless cartoon from the early 2000s, this analog horror series quickly unravels its own illusion. At first glance, it appears to be a lost children's show centered on a wide-eyed pastel-colored rabbit named Angel Hair. The visuals are soft and nostalgic, and the music mimics early PBS programming, creating a comforting low-budget aesthetic. But very quickly, things fall apart. Episodes begin to include abrupt cuts, unsettling close-ups, and characters that move or speak out of sync with their animation. Angel Hair herself starts saying things that don't make sense, referencing locations or people never introduced in the show. The colors degrade, the voices distort, and background details start to shift. In one episode, a door appears where there was none before. In another, a child's sobbing is faintly heard under the theme song. And then there are the cuts. Quick flashes of unknown rooms, VHS-style glitches, and moments where the screen lingers just a second too long. The deeper you go, the more you start noticing hidden messages. There's no official creator credited, just an upload, a channel with no other activity, and a community of viewers trying to decode what they're seeing. Local 58. Often credited with defining modern analog horror, Local 58 is a fictional public access TV station created by Chris Straub. It mimics the feel of late-night broadcasts gone wrong, and uses those glitches to tell a story that's never fully explained, but always deeply unsettling. Episodes vary wildly in format. Some appear as weather updates, others as children's programming, PSA slideshows, or moon landing footage, but they all share a common thread. Something is manipulating the broadcast. In Weather Service, the emergency alert system tells viewers to go outside during a disaster, despite earlier warnings to stay in. In Contingency, the channel airs a Cold War-era government tape. The timeline is non-linear, the events are fragmented, and nothing is ever directly confirmed. But across its short episodes, Local 58 builds a mythos involving a hostile force behind the mood and psychological manipulation. The Smile Tapes. Released in 2022 by creator Patoriku, The Smile Tapes taps into a deeply uncomfortable brand of analog horror, one where happiness itself becomes a threat. The story takes place in an alternate 1990s where a mysterious drug called Smile begins circulating. Instead of relief or euphoria, the drug causes users to contort into permanent grins, lose their grip on reality, and eventually descend into violence or vanish entirely. The series is presented through recovered camcorder footage, infomercials, public safety announcements, and corrupted PSAs. Each episode builds the world without ever directly explaining it, allowing viewers to piece together the terrifying implications on their own. One tape might feature a school assembly about the dangers of Smile, while another shows surveillance footage of someone slowly losing their mind. A defining strength of the Smile Tapes is how it blurs the line between nostalgia and dread. The grainy VHS texture and period-specific aesthetics draw you in, but the slow, quiet horror beneath the surface keeps you unsettled. The pacing is slow, intentional, and methodical, leaning heavily on atmosphere instead of cheap jump scares. It also plays with the idea of collective denial. Society in the series continues to function, even as more and more people disappear or fall victim to the drug. For analog horror fans, The Smile Tapes stands out as a bleak, stylish series that digs into psychological unease through minimalism and implication. The Oldest View. One of the lesser-known entries in Kane Pixel's expanding analog horror catalog, this project stands out as one of the most conceptually ambitious. Released after the viral success of The Backrooms, it shifts focus from liminal spaces to a far more abstract form of horror, time and perception. The series centers around the discovery of a recording, supposedly the oldest surviving visual record ever captured. As researchers begin analyzing the footage, they notice distortions, anomalies, and inexplicable geometric phenomena embedded within the frames. What initially seems like degraded archival material gradually reveals something much more terrifying: the presence of a non-human intelligence observing back. The footage itself seems to react to scrutiny. Kane Pixels uses his signature blend of lo-fi visuals and hyper-realistic CGI to great effect here. The minimalist visuals, combined with scientific logs, glitch-ridden timestamps, and increasingly cryptic documentation, build tension through implication rather than exposition. One of the core themes is epistemological horror, the fear that our tools for understanding the world are inherently flawed. By attempting to document something ancient and incomprehensible, the researchers slowly unravel, not because of what they see, but because of the implications of seeing at all. The Oldest View may not have as wide a following as The Backrooms, but it's one of Kane Pixel's most cerebral projects to date. The Mandela Catalog. Created by Alex Kister and launched in 2021, the Mandela Catalog helped bring analog horror into the mainstream with its deeply disturbing promise and polished execution. The series presents a fictional Midwestern county plagued by alternates, inhuman entities that mimic people with subtle but terrifying imperfections. These creatures don't just imitate, they infiltrate, replacing loved ones, altering memories, and pushing victims toward madness. The core idea is simple. What if something looked exactly like someone you know, but wasn't? That fear drives the series across several volumes, told through police training tapes, emergency broadcast system alerts, surveillance footage, and personal confessionals. The tone is deliberately cold and procedural, which contrasts with the emotional weight of the content. Episodes are rarely longer than 15 minutes, but they linger in your mind long after. The design of the alternates is a major part of the horror. Kister leans heavily on the uncanny valley, faces that are just slightly off, eyes too wide or too empty, smiles held too long. But it's not just visuals. The dialogue is fragmented, with glitched audio, corrupted caption, references that deepen the dread. While the first volume introduces the concept, later entries expand the mythology. There's mention of the intruder, the think principle, and recurring motifs like religious iconography, mental health warnings, and forbidden knowledge. The deeper you dive, the more disoriented you become, mirroring the characters who can't trust their own senses or memories. The Mandela Catalog's blend of religious dread, identity horror, and analog aesthetics has inspired countless fan theories and spin-offs. It's one of the most influential entries in the genre, and a defining example of how analog horror can turn minimalism into existential fear. The Backrooms. First uploaded by YouTuber Kane Pixels in January 2022, The Backrooms became an instant phenomenon by adapting a viral internet creepypasta into a fully realized analog horror universe. The concept originated in 4chan threads, describing an endless yellow maze of liminal office spaces, buzzing fluorescent lights, damp carpet, no windows. Kane took that setting and built a chilling narrative around it using found footage, corporate training tapes, and faux government documents. The first video, simply titled The Backrooms Found Footage, presents a short film in which a cameraman accidentally clips out of reality during a shoot and finds himself in a strange, sterile labyrinth. At first, the location seems empty, but he's soon pursued by an unseen glitchy entity. The handheld perspective, low-resolution style, and spatial disorientation make this one of the most effective analog horror introductions online. Rather than stopping at a one-off, Kane Pixels expanded the series into a timeline involving the fictional Async Foundation, a secretive organization that discovers and attempts to utilize the backrooms for teleportation and storage purposes. Their experiments lead to disastrous consequences. Throughout the series, viewers are drip-fed information through corrupt training videos, leaked memos, and security footage. The deeper the story goes, the more horrifying the implications become. Kane's work on the Backrooms is especially notable for its technical sophistication. Despite being a teenager, he used Blender and visual effects tools to simulate analog film aesthetics while crafting complex 3D environments. The sound design, distorted ambiance, echoing mechanical hums, and abrupt silences creates the atmosphere. Unlike many analog horror series, The Backrooms mixed urban legend, corporate conspiracy, and body horror with a highly cinematic presentation. It's a story of reality breaking down, with humanity standing helpless in the face of a dimensional space that doesn't care if you live, die, or simply disappear. Eventide Media Center. A lesser-known but meticulously crafted analog horror series, this one surfaced on YouTube in 2022 and was created by Mind Night. It draws immediate comparisons to Local 58 and Gemini Home Entertainment, but it takes a more introspective approach in both tone and execution. The series is presented as a collection of archived broadcasts and corrupt VHS tapes from a fictional public access TV station known as the Eventide Media Center, which operated during the late 80s and early 90s. The videos mimic the aesthetic of that era with stunning accuracy. Tape distortions, regional news anchors, old-school bumpers, and emergency alerts all play into the world building. Initially, the content appears innocent, a gardening show, an astronomy program, and local children's content. But over time, the station's footage becomes corrupted by increasingly disturbing intrusions. Something has hijacked the broadcast. Strange symbols, cryptic warnings, and haunting voiceovers begin to interrupt the mundane programming. A key element of Eventide Media Center is its slow-burn pacing. It doesn't throw horror in your face. Instead, it builds tension through subtle inconsistencies. A newscaster's face glitches slightly, a children's song changes lyrics mid-performance, or a star map suddenly contains constellations that don't exist. There's a clear influence from cosmic horror, suggesting that some unknowable entity or force is leaking through the signal, manipulating viewers through seemingly harmless transmissions. The series also plays with themes of memory, cognition, and manipulation. Viewers are left wondering whether the broadcast itself is sentient or if something even more abstract is pulling the strings behind the scenes. It doesn't provide easy answers, and that's part of what makes it so compelling. Eventide Media Center stands out by making the familiar feel off, taking comfort TV from the past and quietly injecting dread until a whole broadcast structure feels compromised. It's not just what you're watching, but the eerie feeling that something else is watching with you. Blue Channel. First appearing online in early 2023, this analog horror series feels like something you accidentally uncovered from a corrupted VHS tape buried in your basement. It's a minimalist yet deeply disturbing project that operates on the edge of surrealism, psychological unease, and broadcast distortion. Unlike other series that lean heavily on narrative exposition, Blue Channel lets its visuals do most of the talking. The premise is deceptively simple. It appears to be the remnants of an old public access TV station, broadcast through a strange frequency known only as Blue Channel. Each video is set against a deep blue backdrop and typically features abstract figures, distorted human faces, static-filled rooms, and looping phrases that become increasingly nonsensical or threatening. There's rarely any coherent dialogue, just cryptic text overlays, glitched-out voices, or mechanical hum of dead air. The horror comes not from jump scares, but from overwhelming discomfort. Certain motifs repeat across entries, such as a figure referred to only as the Watcher, a countdown that never finishes, or a voice that pleads with the viewer to stay awake. Over time, these motifs build a larger sense of dread, hinting that the channel may be broadcasting more than just signals. Another unique aspect of Blue Channel is its refusal to guide the viewer. There are no in-universe explanations, no fake news reports, and no anchoring characters. It's more about atmosphere and psychological tension than plot, and this lack of structure is precisely what draws fans in. Visually, the series sticks to its blue aesthetic and disciplined precision, which ends up being far more disorienting than expected. Faces fade into the blue, rooms disappear into shadow, and the boundary between signal and entity begins to blur. It's this commitment to abstraction that allows Blue Channel to stand out in a genre already defined by its uncanny nature. And that wraps up part 1 of our analog horror dive. If you're new and wondering where to start, Gemini Home Entertainment is a solid gateway. It's structured, unsettling, and brilliantly escalates its horror without ever breaking the analog format. Enjoying the series so far? Then hit the like button, drop a comment with your favorite entry, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where we'll be uncovering even more hidden gems. Goodbye!